by clicking thumbs up. On Facebook, you can use the like feature as well. We'll do our best to get all of the questions that we can in the time we have. Now, before I introduce our panelists, I just want to give a shout out to our collaborating organizations. National Queer Theater is a New York-based theater company celebrating its 2nd birthday. Happy birthday, National Queer Theater. Its mission is to foster and support LGBTQIA communities through social justice in the performing arts, engaging with artists from all over the world. They will be hosting their Criminal Queerness Festival online this year with Dixon Place. And please look out for more information at nationalqueertheater.org. And our other partner is Immigration Equality. Immigration Equality is the leading national LGBTQIA immigration rights organization. Each year, Immigration Equality advises thousands of people fleeing persecution and provide free representation to hundreds of queer and HIV-positive people seeking asylum in the United States. Before the beginning of quarantine, Immigration Equality was one of our community partners for Martina Mayok Sanctuary City, and we're happy that we found a way to support each other again. Now, I'm going to introduce our guests for today. Our first guest is not a stranger to our Zoom webinars. You might have seen Victor I. Cazares. Victor was born twice on paper in El Paso, Texas, and San Lorenzo, Chihuahua, Mexico. Shh, don't tell the government. Reading from Victor's own bio, their plays have been read, developed, or produced at American Repertory Theater, Amherst College, Brown University, New York Theater Workshop, Oregon Shakespeare Festival, Red Fern Theater Company, Teatro Vivo, and Yale School of Drama. Cazares holds an MFA from Brown University and a BA in History of Art from Yale University, where they received a Joseph Albers Fellowship, a couple Sudler grants, and a restraining order against their ex-boyfriend that faked his way into Yale. Victor lives, forages, and produces their social media telenovela, El Amor en Tiempos de Trump, in Portland, Oregon. Ilon Ricon Portas grew up in Venezuela, where they began their career as a medical doctor. In 2009, they came to the US to continue their medical work and decided to apply for asylum due to the dangers they faced in Venezuela as a queer person. Ilon has made New York City their home, but lives the complex existence of an immigrant, especially as conditions in Venezuela have deteriorated, forcing their family, many of whom are artists, to flee to other countries for safety. They now work in medical education and practice photography. Ilon also serves as a volunteer health worker at a COVID-19 testing site for immigrant communities in Queens, run by the organization Somos. Ilon became a US citizen in April 2018. Hi, welcome to you both. We're very excited for this conversation.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me again. And I love the NPR fantasy that you are giving us this afternoon.
Oh, both our panelists know I have makeup on, I have eyeliner. You may not see it, but it helps me get into character. I'm very excited to be in conversation with both of you. As I said before, my name is Gaven Trinidad. I'm also from an immigrant family from the Philippines. I grew up mostly in the US. The East Village is my home. I'm an artist, and I'm very excited to share this room with other immigrant artists and to talk about these issues at hand. I guess we have so many things to talk about, and there are so many ways of going into this, but this is the first time we're truly meeting each other and talking. And I guess let's start off with, when did you first realize the arts was a tool or something through which you could understand or voice your experience about immigration and queerness? Do you remember there was an aha?
Yeah. Can I just say something before? Sorry, like just
Yeah.
I think this is the first time I hear my bio read aloud, including the shh, don't tell the government part. And I was just like, I wonder when they're going to find out. You know, like, when are they going to find out that, like, I'm, like, registered in 2 places as having been born? So I'm like, anyway, sorry.
No.
Will they find out? Is the government watching? The government is probably watching. as like, you know, people being surveilled. You know, the question was like, when did we realize the arts and immigration went together, or
Yeah.
like in our practice? I don't know, like I think like for me, I think I said this before, like immigration, like I grew up on the border on like El Paso, the El Paso Juarez border. And most of my mom's family and my dad's family too, like are from Juarez or lived in Juarez. And so we would spend weekends on the border, like in Juarez. So we would cross back, we would cross to Juarez, and then on our way back, we had to do like my first performance, which I think is like the performance of an American. And you would have to say, like the border patrol agent would say, like, look into the car and not even say a word, but would just like look at us and prompt us to say American or to show a visa. So I think that like, if I really think about it, like that's a first performance, and like immigration and performance have always gone together. And like, I've known from a very young age that national identity is a performance. Like I didn't, you know, I didn't like theoretically know that, but it's something that I practice, and it's something that like I just grew up with, right?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I come from a family of immigrants. And I think I'm the fourth generation in my family who's been an immigrant somewhere in the world. And my great grandmother was a Hungarian who came to the U.S. and she was an artist here. For me, personally, I never thought of myself as an artist until not very long ago. I was very focused on performing in school, and I wanted to be a doctor, and I wanted to, you know, do this thing that took all of the space and all of my time. And I had the opportunity to work in the Amazon for a year as a doctor. And I was there, I think for me, that was the moment where I was so out of my own comfort zone and experiencing so many different things that I could not share with anyone else, because I was, you know, I was with my very small group of people. We were doing work in very remote areas, and I didn't even have a camera. But one of the dentists that worked with me had a camera, and he let me use his camera. And so it was for me the first time that I had the opportunity to start taking pictures, because I wanted to I don't know, tell my family, tell my friends what I was seeing. I was looking at these like amazing places that not a lot of people get to see, and I didn't have the words really to portray what I was seeing. So I started taking pictures that way. And so for me, that was like the first kind of light bulb that, wow, this is a way of storytelling. This is a way of saying things in a different way. And so it started like kind of, you know, it was a little plant that was there, and it started growing. But it was not until I came to the States that suddenly my life changed so drastically 11 years ago, where I no longer was practicing medicine 100 hours every week. I suddenly had time. And suddenly I started drawing. I started seeing all these things that I was so far away from family and friends. I started looking and seeing new impressions. And I wanted to kind of make sense of it all. And I think that was the beginning for me of understanding that the artist was always there, that it just never had the time or the space to come out. So I think for me, that was how things started.
I guess.
Did you know, since like, how old were you when you decided to like, I want to do medicine? Like,
I was very young. I was 6 or 7 years old, and I was thinking about, so, you know, what does it mean to be a grown up, and what am I going to do? I wanted something that, for some reason, I thought I want something that I can take with me and that I don't need a lot of things, so it has to be something in my brain. For a second, I thought I would be a lawyer. And then my parents had the Constitution of Venezuela in their library. They had a lot of books, and I went and looked at it, and it was so boring. And I was like, no, this is not my thing. No, so let's do medicine. And so I had, you know, different people in my life who I had my godfather who was a doctor, and my family had this way of thinking, like, you really need to know yourself in order to be a good person, be conscious, and so I thought, well, what a better way to know yourself than studying medicine? And like, I took it very literally.
Yeah.
But I always had this desire to help people and communicate with people, and so it just like, it was a decision I made when I was 6, and that was it.
And you stuck to it. Wow. That's amazing determination.
I think
I'm very stubborn.
As Victor knows, when I was 6, I was memorizing the words to Annie, the musical.
I love it.
That was my way of learning about the US. And so, and also performance. I think something that you both touched on is how in the embodiment of immigration through the lenses of through your artistic lens, the idea of performance and singing who you are, and also having that, also taking, like, from a camera, also seeing yourself. And I'm wondering if either of you can expand more about that and how that has informed you in your everyday life. Yeah.
Victor, you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. I was sort of joking earlier, but not really, when I was talking about like being surveilled and like thinking that, like, we are under constant surveillance. I'm gonna send you, I don't know if, like, I should have prepared this, but I just came to mind. I'm gonna send you a photo, and I wonder if we can share it. This photo it's a scan of my great grandmother's crossing from 1918. And the government has a record of my, has a record of her crossing. And I had no idea that, like, a picture of her this young existed, and that they have records of like every crossing that happened, or like not every crossing, but a bunch of crossings that happened early in the century.
So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to share screen.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I mean, you can't really, like, it's like hard to read, but this is my great grandmother crossing into Juarez. I mean, from Juarez into El Paso, and actually it's from 1929. And she looks just like my sister and like my mom. And I recently came across this on Ancestry.com. The Mormons have really helped my genealogy project. But it was like such a strange feeling to like come across, like I had no idea I was gonna find this. And to find that the government has been surveilling us, my family, for so long, has a record of us and our entrances into this country. There was something chilling about it. I'm not really answering the question, but it's just like knowing that we've been in this area, and that the border, again, coming from the border, that the border has like no meaning to us, like people that are indigenous and that have like descended from this area, and where like the border like changed over time, right? Like that maxim of we didn't cross the border crossed us, is really true. And it's like, it really fucks with your identity in a way of not really having, there's something like, I'm struggling to articulate it, but there is a sense of like, of a lack of place in some way, and how much crossing has made my identity, rather than like an immigration narrative where like we come here once. And instead it's we come here many times, and / we've always been here / we did not cross. So it's a sort of it's more like of a sea of identity. I don't know if that made any sense.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. It's funny. I also have a picture of my great grandmother's entering Ellis Island in 1913 to the United States.
Oh, wow.
From Hungary. the same as my great grandfather from the Netherlands. But it's interesting because they came to the U.S. and they established themselves in New York, and then my grandmother left and moved to Venezuela, and there she married a Spaniard, and then my mom was born in Venezuela and she's now living in Spain. So it's every generation has been having to move around the world, and I'm here, and my grandmother is American. She was born here in New York, but I still had to ask for asylum, which is a very strange. I used to come here as a kid for visits, and yet when I came here, I had to. I was a refugee and had to seek asylum. I think regarding your question, Gaven, about I think my identity has been changing so slowly in the last 10 years in terms of really understanding who I am. And I don't think I had the language in Venezuela. In Venezuela, I had to have, double life, as many people in our community has to do in different countries, and even here. And so all I knew, I was gay, and had a secret identity with that. I dedicated my life to work as a doctor, so I didn't have to deal a lot with that other part of my life. But then coming here, and particularly in the last, I don't know, 6-7 years, and having the space to explore and the space to learn, to understand, to have a language, to talk to people who are like me, then realizing I'm a non-binary person. So I feel like through my art, like I've been doing a lot of self-portraits through the years as a not to share, but as a way of exploring how I'm changing. I'm also getting a little bit older. I'm also, there are all these things that are happening. And so I don't know, I think it's a lot of observation inwards for me. And trying, there are a lot of things that have happened, very dramatic and very traumatic things regarding my family and everything else. And every single thing that's happened changes you, right? This thing that's happened with COVID, I think it's going to change all of us. And so trying to sort of keep a record in a way of who I was yesterday, who am I today, and maybe who I'm becoming. I hope something really good will come. I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question either, but
No, it's all good. We're just having a conversation. I think something I'm very interested in is how you all see, something that we're all talking about is how borders are physical, and also this abstract idea of language and labels. And I wonder, one of the things that growing up, something that we're all saying that kind of popped in my head while growing up is finding the language to explain ourselves. Like for me, as like to say I'm American, or I'm Filipino American, or I'm Filipino, or I am gay, but then there's only one word in the Filipino language that means gay, but that's not just gay, it means everything. And so like, but then to find some more nuance in other languages, and yeah, I don't know, I want to throw that out there and see.
Can you say a little bit more about how gay means everything?
Oh yeah, so in the Philippines, in Filipino, there's the word bakla, but bakla can mean everyone within the spectrum of LGBTQIA, but then it could also mean, depending on the context and also the dialect, it could also mean like faggot. Like it can also be used as a word against
derogative.
Yeah. So it could. And so trying to find words, and also in a lot of the Filipino queers have also created their own language. So similar to how all queers in different parts of the world create their own language, it's called Bekimon. And so it's really with its own syntax and words and which wordplay and meanings, but it also a lot of adoption of English language around sexuality. There's no word in the Filipino language, to my knowledge, that says trans or lesbian. Or they will say for lesbian, they will use like maybe the word tomboy, but like it's not the word in language bakla. but then there's no nuance to what that means to one's identity. And so in the English language, it was just very interesting as I was going to college and finally took my first, women gender studies class or like queer studies class, how that opened up something new for me. Yeah.
Question, just when you came out to your parents, what language did you use? Like, what word did you use?
English.
Like, so you said gay. Yeah.
Yeah, I used English. Yeah.
That is very interesting. I've been having this issue in the last couple of weeks that is related to language. And, in English, and especially in New York City, a lot of people are starting to use pronouns and they, them, and trying to be very, gentle about how you refer to people. And I don't know, it is also the bubble that I live in, the people I surround myself with, my friends. And now, since this epidemic, I've had to see a lot of people who speak Spanish. And now I'm having to go back in 10 years back in my life and be referred to also, wearing PPE and wearing all these things. It's very, like, people can't read me very well. I'm covered in stuff. And so having to, the sort of wounds that happen when people are speaking to me in Spanish, it is a new feeling of having, because in Spanish, everything is gendered. Everything is either she or him, or, it's either female or male. And being in between, it's not even a thing. Here, if you're going to refer to me as in my title, I'll be doctor, which is, very neutral. And I do prefer that. But in Spanish, I'm doctora, and in the best of cases. And there's also something about the dynamics of Latinos that are a little bit more relaxed sometimes. And so it's the mami, it's the señorita, it's all these things that I no longer feel as mine. And it's painful. It's so painful for me. Yet, people are not coming from a bad place. This is not the moment to I don't even know how to start that conversation. It's not the moment, but it has made me think so much about language. And I don't know, it is interesting to read. I don't know, I feel like I'm going back 11 years when I left Venezuela, and suddenly it's like this sort of role, like, Victor, you were saying in the beginning that you had to act a certain way. I had to act straight a lot in Venezuela. I had to act I had to perform in a way that I haven't had to in 11 years. And so it feels like this old role that I had, and it doesn't fit me anymore. So it's been very interesting.
It must be hard too. I just language question. When would you use the E, like for, like, in Spanish would say doctore, or would it, like, doctore?
You could use that, I think. I haven't spoken in Spanish in such a long time that I even haven't had the time to really think through. But yes, it could be that. But in the space that I'm in, I don't feel it's adequate for me to ask for space, because I'm trying to give space to people who are coming to me in this moment. And there's too many things happening. People are very scared and going through very major things. But it does, as a person, this is something that I want to think about and process.
Yeah. It's tough.
It's the barriers of some of the things about language is talking about borders, and it's very interesting.
Yeah. No, it's so like every year my partner and I go back to El Paso for Christmas. And this year my partner asked if, like, because and at home we only speak Spanish, like in El Paso we only speak Spanish. And my partner asked me, so in speaking to you in Spanish, like what pronouns should I, like, be using when we're, like, in El Paso? And there's a way in which, like, the non-binary, the non-binary identity hasn't yet shifted for me in Spanish, like, because it's like the ella, like, would be, at least like this is where I was last year. And I think like this year it would be the time to introduce these like, the shift in language, right? Like this pronoun of ella at home. Yeah. Thank you. You helped me realize that. It's important. There's a way in which like during like the work that we do during non-pandemic times really does help us during pandemic times.
Yes, yes, it does.
You go to a pandemic with like the gender politics that you start with.
No, that's true. Elon, may I show, there's something that you said about, that both of you talk about the language of self and self-portraits in the way that you see. May I right now do a screen share of some of your work that you shared with us?
Sure.
Because I think something, in addition to the idea of spoken language, there's also that visual language, and I see that you know, that discourse within your work. And I think, Victor, I believe this might be the first time you're interacting with these pieces that I'm going to show from Elon. One moment. So I'm going to show one piece here. Elon, can you share with us if you would like?
Sure. Well, I think this is the image of past and future, in you know, in this quest of trying to find myself. I did this I think 2 years ago, and you know how for me the image on the left looks much younger than the image on the right. So I was trying to sort of to think about, you know, we're not only ourselves right now. We bring things from our past, but we have dreams and we have hopes, and so you know, it's just that trying to find that identity. So this is the painting I did for that.
And I'm going to show another piece. And I think this was published in Gothamist.com. So we have your an example of your photography.
Yeah.
And this is in the site at Queens where you volunteer, is this correct?
Yes. Yeah. So part of the photography, you know, I think I'm really annoying to walk with, because I you know, 3 steps and I stop and I look at something and I want to take a picture of it and then I think about it. So it's like I'm a really annoying person to be around sometimes in that way. But part of the yeah, it's just like you know, I see something, it's like, oh, this thing, and I get stuck there. Yeah, so it has been for me. I feel, you know, everybody's staying home, but I've had the unique experience of having to be in the subway at 5 in the morning every day, and seeing New York City in a way that not a lot of people has. Like, this thing in New York is so weird, you know, the silence. I've documented, like, I have sound audio. I've never done that before. I've done videos, because it's like this silence that it's only broken by sirens since the pandemic started. And so I feel like it was my duty. I was talking with the reporter who did the piece for the Gothamist, and she was telling me, well, you know, reporters are not allowed to go out. Everybody's so told me, you have to record this, and a couple of instructions wanted the piece to be made. And for me, that opened this thing where, like, wow, I'm a witness of something that not a lot of people are seeing. So I wanted to document. It felt this like need, this urge to take pictures of the people in the subway, who's traveling at 5 in the morning, who are the people, you know, something interesting for me. And this is obviously like a very personal opinion, no, and perspective. I
Uh-oh. Elon, I think we might be.
I've been going in the subway.
Yeah,
Are you losing me? Are we okay?
Yeah, I think we're okay now.
Yes? Okay. So that I've been in the subway almost every day for 3 months, I don't know how many months. And I have not seen but one white young woman in the train at 5 in the morning.
Mm.
And so the people that I'm seeing, the New York that I'm seeing is mostly cis males, mostly Latin Americans, mostly people of color who go to work at 5 in the morning. And these are the people that I see in my train, on the A train, that I ride for almost 2 hours to the Queen side every morning. So, you know, these observations are, for me, have been very interesting. And so I've been trying to take a lot of photographs, and at the site also, these doctors, you know, everybody came together in this particular site. In the beginning, it was the Somos people, which is all immigrants who started this. This is the biggest testing site in New York, I've been told, and it was started by immigrants. Before the government started helping out, before the National Guards came in, it was immigrants who started the site. And so, you know, I just feel like I've had the privilege to be witness of these amazing performance by people, and I wanted to capture that.
Elon, like something that strikes me in what you've just shared with us, and in the two pieces that you shared, there are, in the first piece, there's a little border being crossed. There's one side is blue, the other side is red, and there's that kind of border and the kind of growth. But also now looking at the image of the two medical professionals in the PPE, the borders you literally have to cross at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
to go and to capture that moment. Also,
yeah.
like, this is what strikes me too, is that the language in which you have found, there's that distance that you have in your photography, the voyeurism, but you're catching two people who need to touch each other in some way. Yes, in PPE and with gloves, but there is that border being crossed, and knowing that, you know, the story that these are also immigrants who are serving other immigrants, are volunteering their time.
Yeah. That's part of the thing that I've been thinking about the most is, you know, we have our LGBTQ community, we have our immigrant community, we have our people of color communities, we have all these different communities. And
Uh-oh, Elon, are you still there?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think we have you back. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm just saying that I hope that we can cross borders together, that we build bridges between all the different communities. That's the thing.
And Elon, I think right now, Victor also has something to share. Victor, as we know from your last conversation, is that you were able to travel back to Portland from New York very quickly, and you were able to make this short film. And something that you shared with me is that this was maybe the first creative thing that you had done in a long time, or?
Yeah, I wasn't planning on leaving New York. Like, this was like the mid-March, I guess, but I started to get concerned about like we didn't know anything about the disease, like about COVID at the time, right? Like, it was like the information was really, you know, about like who was more susceptible. So like me, like as a pause person, I was just like a little bit concerned. And I think like it happened in 12 hours that I decided, like, you know what, maybe I need to go back to Portland, where I can be more isolated and like where I have like where my partner lives and we can like be more separate. It was like easier to be separate. And of course now we know that like HIV is actually, thank goodness, not a comorbidity necessarily. So this is this video came from writing. Like I started to write something and it was like my first piece of writing during the pandemic. And I've always been obsessed. I was like, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with HIV. And it just like, yeah, it just tapped into that. So I don't,
So
share.
let's go ahead and share.
My mom is from San Lorenzo, Chihuahua. I learned about pandemics from a black and white television, the size of a year-old child. By the time I met it, its white skin had turned the color of spoiled milk, the way plastic tended to do. It's strange to remember a technology now obsolete. I didn't think that would happen. I thought TV would be around forever, just like I thought it would always need an antenna, a signal. I look up, and there are no more signals, only pulses, light pulses of transmission. 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Something that I see in both of your work and the language, the visual languages that you both work in. I'm wondering if do you consciously think that there is a queer lens? I think there is, do you know where I'm getting at? Like, I think the work that you both create is so tied as well as being queerness. Because like my gut reaction to Victor's piece is that it lives in its own time. It's like this queer experience of time and place, and there's always that blurriness through the lenses. And it's as an artist, it's purposely so. It was chosen to have, or yeah. And yeah.
I think like, so for me, like growing up, before like the word queer,
Yeah.
or I knew about a queer sensibility or anything, like it just so happened that like the stuff that I was sort of gathering for my like archive of like what I liked just happened to be queer. Like they were like very like so it's like an accumulation of queer references that I can't help but make from, if that makes sense. Like I acquired the materials first, and it's queer because like these materials are queer. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And the reason why I ask, at least in my practice as an artist, through my experience of my own queerness, I'm always, or on my work as a community engagement associate at the workshop, is always the idea of community and to how to gather. to create family who are not blood related, creating chosen family and allowing that to happen. I think is something that I've become conscious of that, of my experience of being queer that lends to that. And specifically a queer immigrant, you know, like if my family's language doesn't express me, nor or my family's faith or my family doesn't accept me, what then do I create? And I know, reflecting as a queer person, as a queer artist, as part of a queer immigrant family, like I've learned that I've long time subconsciously, like similar to what you're saying, Victor, like that was just the language that like the references you were choosing from, and they happen to be queer because they gravitate I'm putting words into your mouth, but you might have gravitated towards, you know, and you felt, yeah. And I just wonder if there is a consciousness of, for either of you, after reflection, how your experiences of queerness and being an immigrant has fed into your artistry. You know?
I guess it can't help but permeate whatever it is that we do, you know. This is who we are, I think. And I don't know, in life we're just exploring and learning about ourselves and the world that surrounds us. And I think as artists, or I think everyone, you know, you can't help but be touched by what's happening around you. And that is nutrition, and that feeds into what, at least for me, into what I'm doing. I think everybody has that sensibility. Be it, for me as an artist, I think I'm very sensitive to what's around me, the sounds, the visual, the lights, everything is always affecting how I'm experiencing the moment. Music.
What I loved about your drawing, Ilan, is I'd never, drawing, painting, like I'd never, it's so obvious now, Janice as a non-binary icon or entity. Like I'd recognize him as like as an immigration vision, right? Or like as a border person, but also now like, oh duh, like of course, like this like, yeah, no, so thank you. And like there's this way in which both of these images have like a doubling and a mirroring,
Yeah,
like caring for each other, past, present.
I guess if you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to enter questions in our Q&A. Let me see. Oh, so we have, hi Priscilla. So my wonderful mentor, dramaturg Priscilla Page has sent a question. Priscilla says, I love seeing the photograph and the short film. Can Victor and Ilan talk about intimacy in their works and the border crossings that take place in their work?
Hi, Priscilla. It's so great to interact with you online again, or online after seeing you in March. I think like the week before I flew New York. The question is about intimacy in my work and the border, right?
Yes. The intimacy in your work and the border crossings that take place in your work.
Yeah. A lot of my work is, my plays are about, I mean, most of them take place on a border. This is hard,
Priscilla
sorry.
also added, because I think the TV and the medical gear in both of your works present borders too.
Yeah, like the border of the body, like fluids, protecting it.
Priscilla says yes.
Well, I mean, even in the moment for me, you know, when I'm doing a photograph, there's a there's a separation, but there's also, you know, there's a separation so that then I can unite whatever it is that I'm seeing to a feeling or to an experience or different experience. I think that I'm always, you know, pretty terrified sometimes of when I start painting and there's a blank page and you start doing a line here and a line there. And so, you know, the intimacy of that moment for me, I try to, I think that it is really hard to keep myself from the judgments and the all the things that always come, but trying to keep myself open. And so that opening of what I'm feeling or what I'm trying to do is an actual effort of, you know, trying to reach into my own feelings or my own subconscious or my own idea, and trying to bring that into a place that makes sense. And that maybe hopefully it can engage someone in the same way. And so, you know, it is interesting how you know, I sometimes I take pictures and I like to see how some of my dear people will react to them. And sometimes there's people who can see immediately. It's a photograph of a train or whatever, but then there's the feeling and people can see that. And so there's these like, you know, there's the barriers of the physical thing, and then there's the connections that happen as well. So I think that is it is a, and when people get what I'm trying to say or what I felt in the moment, and you know, it's okay if you don't feel it, that's totally fine. But when people do feel it, then there's a connection to a part of myself that I have a hard time sometimes expressing or sometimes talking about. There's a vulnerability there, right? I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question very well, but trying to work through this. It's a hard question, I think.
It is a hard question. I think, like, for me, I'm struggling, and I think I've been struggling throughout this entire conversation of squaring the border and immigration and like my own identity. Just like, because when you grow up on the border, when you live on the border, and you, in my case, privileged enough to be able to go back and forth, because I was born on two sides, born on this side, that allows me to cross. But it's like, it's such a way of life. Like, it's this idea of being an immigrant. I don't know, right? Like, because I grew up in the border. I grew up like where my family's been for generations, and it's just like these two cities are so close, right? Like these edges are touching, and it's an identity made out of intimacy, right? Because like you're so close to something that is not yours. Like growing up on this side and being able to see sort of like your mom and your dad's past, and yeah, just like that constant question of like, who are you? What are you? As a way to gain access to the rights of that are here in the US. Yeah, no, I don't know. Like this idea of being from the border and being an immigrant, like I didn't learn that not everybody knew about the border, right? Until I left El Paso. I didn't really realize how much of a unique experience I lived in, and like how much not America I was. Like I didn't, El Paso is like mostly Mexican, like almost like 87% when I was growing up. And yeah, like just the fact that like people don't even know, right, that you can't cross into the border. I wrote a play called Ramsés contra los Monstruos when I was in grad school, and we had, it was for a reading, and there weren't any Latinx actors then. This is like in the program, this is like 2012. And one of them was just so confused about why somebody couldn't cross the border. They're just like, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand the drama of this. Like, why can't someone cross? And it's like, how do you not know? How do you not know how much our borders are policed? How do you not know that?
I think we have a related question from the audience. I have from the audience, it says, I have an immigrant family who doesn't accept my queerness. I often fear I consume my immigrant family and their beliefs, attitudes, struggles in my art making, in search for glory in white theater or a white theater world audience. And the question is, can either of you relate in your genres? And I believe the person asking the question is wondering if you find any pushback or any misunderstanding, or how does your identity play within your art making? And I think something that Victor, you were saying is simply like the lack of awareness of what does it mean to cross borders, and with the artists with whom you were working at that time.
No, it's like a lacking of context. Like, people don't have a context. In terms of, one of the things that, like, in my work, for example, like I write about borders, I write about deviance, like my own deviance, and specifically, like, I don't write from a place where, like, we should be model minorities or model citizens. I write, like, from a place of we are who we are, and, like, sort of like mistakes and unethical choices. And early on in my career, when I was writing a lot about drugs, people did not want to read or produce a play about drugs and Latinos. Because it would give a bad image. And that was a problem because I myself was a drug user. And so people sort of trying to police that identity and, like, put up barriers to it. It's like, oh no, this is like, we don't want you, right? Like sort of like, we don't want your play, and, like, because we don't think these people should be on stage. Not knowing that I was the drug user, right? That, like, I was writing from my own personal experience. So I don't know if that's, like, answering the question, but yeah, like I've run up against that, like, where my identity, my multiple identities, my many identities have sort of put people off, including people that should be my allies, right? Because I'm not presenting an ideal model citizen, like, this person, do they deserve to be here? I think that question is wrong. Everyone deserves to be here. Everyone deserves human rights. Everyone deserves representation. Rant over.
For me, I have a tendency to put everything in compartments because of my first 30 years in Venezuela, having to compart them, have very separate lives where I had to self. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So be brave that you are out there, and I'm trying to do this thing because this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm doing. I think I had more the tendency to hide, and so I only show some of the things that I do to certain people. I don't think I show to, because I'm always afraid of that. I try to avoid conflict a lot, and so with my family, I'm trying more and more to break that border, I guess, that bridge, that I'm trying to build a bridge between all myself and my family and my community. My community in Venezuela is now all over, there's a huge Venezuelan diaspora, but I don't think that a lot of people from my childhood know me right now. They would not even know who I am, because I've kept those things very separate. And so now you know, to, I don't know, I think in events like this and talking to people like you, Victor, or you, Gavin, like trying to find strengths in the community. And I work really hard to be here, and so I'm going to be here. And I can show that, you know, some of the things that I'm doing, and that takes a lot of, really a lot, and show that, and the, you know, the not so pretty necessarily. And so that is, I think that's part of the work of every artist, is view that you don't necessarily show. It's really hard with family, and it's really hard with a community that doesn't accept you, respect you, or a lot of the times hate you, and don't want you either here or there. In a way, you know, you were talking about how people can't understand the borders and everything else. I myself, when I came here, I didn't know I had all these labels that were put on me as soon as I got to the United States. You know, suddenly I had these new identities that were stuck to me. And I, you know, so I'm trying to explore those and be like, well, yes, I am all of these things, but not only that, you know, so that idea of crossing borders is also means crossing different parts of myself and trying to find, so that I can express something. After all, we're all human, and that's the human voice. Our experiences can be very different, but at the same time, you know, we need to stick together and create the space for this person who's asking. I hope that this person can find the courage and to continue. There's no wrong answers when you're doing art, I don't think. So I think that little by little, surround yourself with people who support you so that you can feel stronger every day.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, like to continue, like no matter what, like continue writing, continue creating, continue working on your art, and like people come around, or like time sort of, if you're ahead of the curve at a certain time, like just like eventually people catch up, and it's important not to wait for them, I think. Don't slow your development down for other people.
And thank you so much for that, for those answers. Given the time, we can do one more answer and we're going to close up. And the question that we received, wondering if you have any artists or works that have been particularly resonant for you in this moment. I know it's like a moment, like we're
like
all
in this moment of COVID and the pandemic, yes. Other than Contagion, no, I actually have not seen it. I have a partial answer, but it's just about like sort of in this conversation, I keep hearing Tony Kushner's, like the opening, like where we open on the eulogy for the grandmother, which is like the line of, "You did not grow up in America. No such place exists." That is like such a reassurance that like this place does not exist. America does not exist. I don't know why it's reassuring, but it's this idea. Again, like for me, like working through being from the border and like being an Indigenous person to that area, like this idea that America doesn't exist is really is really hopeful.
I can't think of anything. I've been very, very busy and not having a lot of time to expand a lot of the things that I'm seeing. I think that I'm very taken by the photography of the moment. the very real photography that is showing so many different facets of what this has meant for the world. You know, from the images of people dancing in their roofs or singing from their balconies in Spain. My family's in Spain. To, you know, the babies who are being born now and are like with all these PPE in place. And so I feel like at this point, I'm just trying to absorb everything that's happening and trying to be okay with just absorbing and not feel the anxiety that I'm not creating as much at this point. Because I feel like there's so many things coming, and I'm sorry, I have not had the time to really stop and so I haven't seen anything yet that I think I've seen a lot of images, and so that's the part I think I'm very visual in that way, that is that's been grabbing my attention here and there. So I'll keep my eye. Hopefully in the next phase of this COVID, we might find some really amazing things. I hope people are, when they can, taking care of themselves and having the opportunity to create, because this is a very interesting time in our history.
Yeah.
I wanted to take this time to thank you to both Victor and Alon, and for just spending time with us and to answering the questions and really navigating a very complicated ideas of borders and queerness and immigration. And I thank you for spending the time this afternoon. And I also want to thank, thank you. I would also like to thank National Queer Theater and Immigration Equality for bringing us all together. Just before we leave, I just wanted to share that upcoming events, just to plug, this Monday, we're having a wonderful masterclass with Will Davis. That's this Monday at 3 p.m., as well as this coming Wednesday, a fireside chat with our 2050 fellow, Camille Howard, with director Ruben Santiago Hudson. And on that Friday, the education team, which includes myself, Alexander Santiago Hirao, and Adam Otses Rubin, we're doing a webinar for theater educators called Teaching Theater Online, Engaging Student Creativity. You could find all of that on our website at New York Theater Workshop, nytw.org, or you could follow our handle at NYTW79. So that all of you know, all artists and guests who contribute to these online gatherings are compensated, and we are continuing to pay our staff. If you are in the position to support our work with a gift of $25, $10, $5, or any amount, please consider donating to support our work through this crisis and beyond. You can donate at nytw.org, and there will be a link to a short survey in post-event email from Zoom or in the comments on Facebook. So please take a moment to share your thoughts. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. And also, starting in June, Pride Month. So enjoy. Woo! Goodbye, friends. Goodbye.